mornings from 6 to 9 for information, entertainment, Jersey's top newsmakers, and of course, two-way talk on the topics, issues, and stories that matter most to you. Call Jersey Central at 732-545-9282. Toll free at 888-545-9282. Watch Jersey Central live online at WCTCAM.com or listen on your smartphone with the iHeartRadio or TuneIn apps. Connect with WCTC on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube by searching 1450 WCTC. Raquel Williams with local, state, national, and world news. Bernie Bider with up-to-the-minute traffic report. And Frank Lombardo with the weather forecast you can depend on. This is Jersey's Morning Show, Jersey Central with Bert Barron. And it starts now.
It is 7:10. Welcome to hour number 2 of Jersey Central on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC. The voice of Central Jersey is Bert Barron. Good morning to you. 732-545-9282. Toll free 888-545-9282. And of course, you can watch our video simulcast at WCTCAM.com. Contest for you coming up a little bit later on. Chance to win 4 flex tickets to see the Somerset Patriots at TD Bank Ballpark in Bridgewater. You get to pick the game you want to go to, so your chance to win that is coming up. And we're going to have a special guest who will join us a little bit later on in this hour. Once again, he's going to be doing something rather spectacular to raise money for a group in Ocean County called Ocean of Love that helps out kids with cancer, and he's doing something rather spectacular very soon. He was on with us last year and talked about it, but he's doing it again. So we're going to talk to Rich McCleary coming up a little bit later on in this 7 o'clock hour. Let's get right to the Raritan Bay Medical Center Jersey Newsmaker Hotline and welcome in a special guest who is with me. She was kind enough to provide the information that I gave you last hour about that was sent by Equity Florida, who was issuing a statement about the mass shooting, of course, that happened yesterday morning. My guest who is with me now, her name is Cathy Renna. She is a communications consultant. She also happens to be a gay activist, and she's right here in Montclair, New Jersey. And she's joining us this morning, and I want to thank her for taking some time. Cathy, it's Bert Barron. Thank you for making yourself available this morning. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, Bert. Thanks for having me on.
Give me your initial reaction when you got word about the shooting that happened yesterday morning.
Well, I was actually home here in Montclair in the morning, woke up, and, I obviously consume a lot of news since I work in communications, and all my clients are LGBT-focused, and, of course, immediately saw all the reports and started to get in touch with groups. Equality Florida is actually not a client, but they are run by a very dear friend, and so I immediately reached out to them and said, is there any way I can help? And, they're down there really dealing with just a catastrophic event in the community, and not simply the LGBT community, really, all of us. And I spent the day, working on this and trying to get the word out, working with journalists to help them tell the story better, as we all were, looking for more information, new information to see what had actually happened. And by the evening, I went into Manhattan where, so many of us go when something like this happens, to the Stonewall Inn. And there were thousands of people there, Bert, thousands of people who were sad, who were angry, who wanted to be in a place where they were surrounded by community. Although I will tell you there was a lot of security, and the counterterrorism folks were there in full force as well. But it was a chance to talk about the issues related to this and how this is about an attack, not just an attack on the LGBT community, although clearly that was the specific target. This is an attack on America. And I think that it's important that we look at why these things happen, how they happen, and what we can do to.
Yeah, and as far as the heightened security, there was an event in Maplewood, too, yesterday, Cathy, where initially when we first got word about what happened, like, well, you know what, at this time we're not going to do anything. And then by the time that event rolled around yesterday afternoon, there was absolutely heightened police presence there. And I think we're going to see this for an indefinite period of time going forward. What do you think?
I agree. I was talking to several reporters last night at the Stonewall, and, we were talking about how the New York City Gay Pride Parade is coming up last weekend of this month, and lots of events happen associated with it, and pride events around the country. I mean, this is June. Again, these are very intentional attacks, whether it's an attack in Paris or whether it's an attack in the United States. And, June is a month where we as a community and we as a country celebrate an appreciation for diversity. In this case, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. And like all hate crimes, and terrorism really is a hate crime. It's a way of expressing anger at a culture that they think, it goes against their beliefs. In this case, and I think that's really the challenge here, is that so much of this conversation is solely focused on the fact that it was an LGBT club, and it was, and I've worked on hate crimes my entire career. But I think we're missing the bigger picture here, and that's that we're living in a country now where if we don't do something about gun control, if we don't do something about Islamophobia, if we don't do something about the fact that there are groups of people who do not want Americans to continue the way of life that we've created, we're gonna only see more of this.
Yeah, you're right. The bloodshed will not stop until something is done. And you were so right about when you said it's a bunch of factors. It's gun control. It's mental health. It's radical religions or whatever it is. And I think when you have all those come together, and the fact that there's hatred because people in any community, whether it's LGBT or anybody, the fact that we just have the freedom to do whatever we want to do, Cathy, gay or straight, that's what angers people. That's what angers other people around the world, unfortunately.
That's exactly right, and the whole world is watching, and we're not the only place. Obviously, I mean, other countries are the targets of terrorism as well because they have freedoms. Just as we saw in Paris not too long ago.
Yeah.
I think that's what this is about. These are attacks on freedom, and it's just really it's horrifying. And the LGBT community is a community that is very used to being at vigils because of hate crimes. I mean, we've seen, for decades and decades, hate crimes. And we had a president who finally passed hate crimes legislation that actually included sexual orientation and gender identity. So it's a very important issue to the community. We're very sensitive to it. And last night at the rally, it was very important, I think, that there was a woman there who was lesbian, but who was also Muslim. And she talked about how she came here because she knew here she would be safe.
Wow.
She was not safe, and how these issues intersect. And I have to say, I was watching right before I went over to the Stonewall. I was watching a press conference by CARE, the National Islamic Organization, and the head of the organization, really for the first time that I've ever heard him, maybe the first time ever, said that homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, they're all intertwined, and we have to look at the intersections of all of these phobias and isms and reasons why people don't like what Bill Clinton coined as the other in the early 90s. And I think is a really good way to describe fear of diversity, fear of the other.
Yeah.
And if this is it's a horrible word to use, but if this is an opportunity to have people start to understand that, and even if we don't agree on everything, understand that we're in this together and build bridges. Like in Queens, there was a very similar vigil to what happened at the Stonewall, and it was done by LGBT groups and Muslim groups together. That to me is something that shows that out of this, hopefully we can learn to work together better and more, and also work together better and more to make the kinds of changes you were just talking about. I mean, there were big signs there with that said, this is about gun control. You're right. All of the issues that, we see sometimes individually in these cases, in this specific case in Orlando, came together. Access to guns, mental health issues, homophobia, and the kind of radical thought around American values. And that's why this really was as bad as it was.
Yeah, one more observation, Cathy, and then we got to get to a traffic and weather update. But I think sometimes when people make the mistake of targeting a specific group, I mean, we saw this in 9/11. I think we're going to see a lot of this come out of the events that happened in Orlando, Florida yesterday. When you attack a group like this, it has a galvanizing effect. It has a unifying effect where people are stronger and more unified than ever. Do you get a sense of that following the events of yesterday where people are going to say, you know what? Just because this happened, you know what? I'm not scared. I'm not going to, shelter myself in my house and never go out. we're going to be more strong and more prevalent than ever before. Do you sense that sort of a galvanizing or a unified sense now in the community?
Absolutely. There was a young man who had a T-shirt on. He clearly had just taken a Sharpie and made it himself, and on the back it said, "I will not be intimidated." And thousands of people showed up, in front of the Stonewall last night, right after this happened. And yes, there was security, but one of the reporters I was talking to from the Associated Press, she said to me, this is I feel like I'm a sitting duck. And she's right. I mean, there are going to be, hundreds of vigils around the country. I cannot, keep up with the emails that are coming in. People are setting up websites and Facebook pages and, ways to support the victims and their families.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
We're finally starting to see their names. And one last thing, it's really important, and I hope people understand this and pay attention to it, is the club that he targeted was a Latino club. And it was Latino trans night that night. And trans women of color are far and away the most common victims of hate crimes in the LGBT community. And as we see these names come out, you'll see that they are really almost all people of Latino background. And,
I did notice that pattern
really,
now that you mentioned it. Yeah.
Yep. It is it's just horrifying. You see these numbers, 23 years old, 20 years old, 22 years old. I mean, BuzzFeed just started putting up a list, as did the city of Orlando. And, we're going to be hearing about this for weeks. I can't imagine a crime scene with 50 people killed and 53 injured.
Horrific. You're right.
We're going to be talking about this for a while. I'm happy to come back anytime.
I really appreciate that, Cathy, and thank you again for making yourself available last minute this morning. And I'm sure we will talk again, but thank you again so much, all right?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Cathy Renna, my guest on the Rare